Miles Sanders could be the week 1 starting running back for the Cowboys. What does that mean for their offense? We'll break it down next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. You can also listen to me on the Locked On Dynasty Football podcast. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. Landon, we're going to continue to discuss the Cowboys OTA from last week. They have another practice on Tuesday. But one of the big takeaways from the Thursday practice that was open to the media is that Miles Sanders, the veteran running back the Cowboys signed from the Panthers, looked pretty good during that session. So first of all, do you believe that he has a chance to be the RB1 week 1 starter against the Eagles?
I mean, I certainly think there's a chance, right? Like it's obviously an open competition. I think we have kind of, put our money down on which horse we think is going to kind of end up there. But I think that Miles Sanders, is a guy that if you could get something close to what you saw from him in Philly, I think a lot of that was, based on who he was running behind. But
Sure.
I think that that's fair to say the opposite of what was going on with him in Carolina, and I think you watched between the 2022 season and the 2023 season when he goes to Carolina, he went from being a Pro Bowler behind the Eagles offensive line, which obviously was the bulk of probably his production, to an incredibly inefficient running back in Carolina. So which kind of running back are the Cowboys getting? I imagine it's somewhere in between. I think it's easy for us to look at him as a 28-year-old running back who's on his third team that's kind of bounced around a little bit. But it also could easily be, hey, this is a guy that didn't get a lot of carries in his time in Carolina. And when he didn't get a lot of help blocking up front in front of him. Maybe there's still a lot of juice left in this guy. When we get into camp, we find out, hey, a better system, a better blocking, more attention elsewhere, that he can actually produce when in a better situation, much like some of these other folks we've talked about.
I just think he's the more dynamic running back between Javante Williams and then obviously Miles Sanders. Now, the knock on Sanders compared to Javante is that Javante, I think, is a better pass blocker. I think Javante is a little bit more reliable, just as like an outlet pass, reception or pass catcher. But in terms of like creativity and burst and athleticism, I think that all goes to Miles Sanders. And the question I had for you, Landon, is I think of all the running backs on the roster, the one that we feel the best about being on the roster is Jaydon Blue. And he's the one that we probably feel the best about what his role is going to be. So of the two veteran running backs, Javante Williams and Miles Sanders, which one fits with Blue better?
I mean, I kind of feel like if you're looking for someone who's close, like if you're trying to pair him with somebody that's the opposite of what he is, I think Javante Williams works better as a pairing in a thunder and lightning scenario. But if you're trying to, instead assemble your running back room where you have like 3 running backs that are all of very similar type, right? Or like you're trying to find dynamic guys at every single one of the running back spots, maybe you do like pairing him with Sanders a little bit more because it's kind of, you get similar kind of, I think, burst and explosive. I mean, I think Blue is more bursty, more explosive, especially at this point. But I think as far as their game goes, like Sanders has some more miss-em to it than Javante Williams does. And so that's why I also kind of think that, he's being, if you look at his numbers, that he's being very beholden to the blocking that's in front of him. Because I think what makes Miles Sanders good is that if you can get him to the second level,
Yes.
he can beat guys. He can beat linebackers with his feet and with his safeties with his feet, like, make the miss. I think he struggles to get through the line if it isn't blocked up right for him. And I think that's the difference between him and Javante Williams, is that Williams has got a little bit more size and strength to kind of run through defensive linemen's arm tackles, whereas Sanders doesn't have that ability.
Yeah, and I don't know if Miles Sanders has great vision either. I think once he's downhill and running, you're right. Like, that's where he can make guys miss. That's where he can turn an 8-yard run into a 15-yard run. But I do wonder if the Cowboys are going to look at Javante Williams and be like, you know what? We can live with 2-3 yard runs, but what we can't have are these runs where we lose a yard, we get 0 yards. We'll give up the big plays in Javante Williams for more safety and consistency, with the idea that Jaydon Blue hopefully is the guy that gives us the home run ability. I'm fascinated to see how this backfield shakes out. I think there's also a chance, Landon, that neither of these running backs are on the roster in week 1 and they go out and trade for somebody, or they just lean on some of the guys they have. It's one of the more unique backfields we've seen during the entire time that we've covered the Cowboys.
I mean, there's also no reason that they couldn't both be on the roster, right?
Sure.
And I think one of the suggestions we've said is Javante Williams and Blue as the kind of 1-2 punch, and then Sanders as the kind of rotational third running back. Yeah, maybe Maffa is like on the practice squad as a guy that you call up for certain games if someone gets injured or something, until he earns one of those roles, right? And there's no reason that we couldn't flip that and make it Miles Sanders and Blue that are the kind of 2 lead roles, and then Williams is the guy that kind of comes in and gives you a series or 2, right? I think that they've left themselves a lot of options, and I think that that's where they want to be right now. Is I don't think they want to put labels on anything, because they want to see how it develops naturally, and then just put the best guys out there for the best situation.
By the way, I think your first trio is the right one. Javonte as the quote unquote starter, Blue as the change of pace, and then Miles Sanders as the come in, do everything back if one of those guys gets hurt. If I had to kind of put my chips down on how this running back room shakes out, I think that's the way that I anticipate it, at least starting the year.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I think you and I both kind of saw Miles Sanders as a he's getting older, and maybe maybe it's kind of starting to decline for him. But there's certainly the chance that his lack of production in Carolina was very much based on the fact that he was in Carolina. So I wouldn't be shocked if there was a little bit of a bounce back from him this year, and maybe he's used a little bit more than we expected.
Yeah, I just thought it was notable that multiple beat reporters at Cowboys practice were impressed by him. He had a big run up the middle. He had a swing pass where he got up the field. It would have been a big play. So just something to keep an eye on as we look forward to the Cowboys' third week of OTAs and eventually minicamp coming up. All right, let's talk about Kenneth Murray, a player that the Cowboys traded for this offseason that we honestly just have not discussed a bunch since the move happened. But it sure seems like he's going to have a big role into the defense. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. As a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. Here's how it works. You post your job, and LinkedIn's new feature can help you write job descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip. Use the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. It's no wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn has helped them find high quality hires. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That is linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are continuing to break down the Cowboys OTAs. And one of the more notable notes from John Machota is that Kenneth Murray was the green dot linebacker. If you're watching with us on YouTube, you can see quote. First of all, do you believe that? And second of all, what kind of role are you expecting Kenneth Murray to have in this defense?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly conceivable. I mean, look, I think he is definitely, as of right now, the starting Mike linebacker, right? Like, I think there's, it's early days. We haven't had training camp. There's OTA. We're just in the middle of OTAs. They even haven't had mini camps yet. But I think it's pretty clear that until they get a little bit healthier at the position, these veterans are going to play and play a lot. In fact, I mean, I like to read. We all like to read the tea leaves on these things, right? And honestly, like, you don't see a lot of positive, or how do I phrase this? A lot of certainty comments from beat writers in OTAs, right? And when you do, you should pay attention, because that means somebody's told them something, right? I feel like I saw 3 or 4 different beat writers say that no, it is definitely going to be Kenneth Murray and Jack Sanborn as the 2 starting linebackers in week 1. Not even just like to start training camp or to start, competition. Like, it's almost like somebody's been telling them, hey, these are our 2 guys until Overshone is back, and then we'll discuss that a little bit further. So I guess what I'm getting at is, I don't know that Maris Leofau is getting any kind of special deference from this coaching staff. I think they got their guys in free agency, and they're going to roll with their guys. But I also think that, we talked about Sanborn a lot, and we talked about why he's a fit for this defense and why he plays well and is underrated. I think Kenneth Murray is an interesting player as well, too. I mean, look, he has very clear, well-defined weaknesses that we all are very well aware of, right? And I think that something that at least you and I were very well aware of coming out of Oklahoma, right? Like, it was very clear where this guy had strengths and weaknesses. I don't think we talk enough about his strengths, right? Because I think his weaknesses are very clear and defined. I think people still view Kenneth Murray as this only this run and hit linebacker who, is just flowing to the football and is, and that incredible kind of athlete. And he is an incredible athlete, but he is also more of a downhill type player, right? He's more of a physical player than I think he gets credit. Is he the most instinctual linebacker? No, I think we've seen that's been an issue with him. He can get fooled if his eyes get fooled. But I think if you pair him with a kind of coach that we've been saying this whole time is just a linebacker, teacher, is just a guru that can get the most out of these guys. Kenneth Murray is the kind of linebacker that you feel like could be most affected by being put into a system where he's not being asked to overthink things and just being asked to go out and play football.
So just to be clear on the strength and weakness, because I think his greatest strength ends up becoming a weakness for him sometimes. He is so good at coming downhill and being a great athlete, and he's powerful. There's a linebacker coming out of North Carolina. Now I think his name was Zach Brown. This is a while ago, who was a really good downhill linebacker that just had like pillows for hands, like just was not physical at all. That's not Kenneth Murray. Like he will wrap up, he will tackle you hard. You will feel it when he tackles you. The problem with Murray is that that's all he wants to do is come downhill and hit running backs. The eyes can be really bad, and he's not great at necessarily diagnosing where to anticipate where the running back's going or where the hole is going to open up. And he can come downhill so fast that it opens up a hole somewhere else, and all of a sudden you've got a big run. So
misdirection. Misdirection is terrible, right? Like, it's just like he gets him going one way, and then he's so late to react to go back the other way. It's tough.
So can Matt Eberflus fix that? I'm pretty optimistic that he can, because I remember watching Tremaine Edmonds, who was with the Bills up here, who very similar type of linebacker, like downhill, athletic, bad eyes, and he turned him into a pretty good linebacker in Chicago. So we'll see. But if it's ever going to happen, it's going to happen here in Dallas with Matt Eberflus.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just kind of like simplifying reads for him, just not making things overly complicated, just so allow him to kind of make a read and then pull the trigger. Because I do think the issue is that he's just so quick to pull the trigger downhill that it's like, he gets full of traps and misdirection.
Well,
stuff.
and that's why it's so interesting that he's been the green dot, which is, if you're not familiar, that means that you're calling the defensive plays. Do you think that's just because he's the most experienced linebacker currently on the roster?
Well, I think that I think to be the green dot, you have to have a certain amount of leadership. You have to have a certain amount of intelligence. You have to be able to understand the defense conceptually. And I think that that's different than instincts, right? Than like post snap, like read and react, and like in understanding what's happening to him. I don't think he's being fooled because it's like he's dumb, or he's it's like it's an instinctual, like things are happening so fast that it's like it's sub 1 second. So
that's why Sean Lee was so good at having the game slow down, and he could just see things happen before they happen. Kenneth Murray's just not there, and honestly, he probably never will be because Sean Lee was special that way. But you know what I mean? Like the game just hasn't slowed down for Murray like that yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to always just learn to trust his instincts, and his instincts are wrong sometimes, And I think I don't know if it's not like, I don't think it's an issue with like understanding conceptually what he's supposed to be doing in the defense, what everyone else is supposed to be doing in the defense. He's an experienced veteran linebacker, started a lot of games in this league, so I think as far as getting everybody in the right defense and lined up and their assignment, he knows that part. It's the should I fall for this guard pulling or not? That's where his brain kind of fails him post snap, I think.
There are so many players on this team that are on like the last year of their contract or on a 1-year deal. And Kenneth Murray and Jack Sanborn are your two starting linebackers, both going into contract years. They both really need it. Again, everything is setting up for Kenneth Murray to have a really good season. Will the defensive tackles ahead of him be good enough to maximize his ability? I don't know. We should mention that Jay Toye, the Cowboys' 7th round pick from UCLA, was rotating in with the starters on Thursday. There's been kind of some buzz growing about him over the last week or so. But yeah, I think the defensive tackles, how they play, will likely tell us how Kenneth Murray plays this year.
Yeah, I think it's, not a very unfamiliar tune for Cowboys fans. I mean, I think this is something that's been an issue for a while, right? Like, and I think you can blame the lack of talent in the linebacker spot, and I don't think that's been the issue for most of these years. I think it's been their kind of inability to stay clean, their inability to see where the ball is because they're getting a face full of guard, and it's hard to get to the ball when you're 3 or 4 yards off the line of scrimmage and being pushed backwards because you're facing a double team every single play. And you can't get a defensive tackle to stay on his feet to keep you clean. So it's a tough life to be a Cowboys linebacker, to be honest.
All right, let's talk about Michael Irvin, who was present during the Cowboys OTAs this week. He was on the field. I saw a picture of him standing next to George Pickens. He had some really interesting things to say about the Cowboys and Brian Schottenheimer. We will get to that next. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Scouting Show. As training camps get closer and moves are being made, hosts Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, Landon, Michael Irvin, the Cowboys legend. Not the original 88, the second 88, right? Jim Pearson is the original 88. Just want to make sure. I also watched some Antonio Bryant highlights this morning. So
another 88.
That's probably the best way to describe him.
Another 88.
Yeah. Michael Irvin at practice. He went on a couple podcasts after Cowboys OTAs, and he said some really interesting things, and you've got some notes for us.
Yeah. So this is a little bit of a ride, but the reason I think that Irvin has kind of cracked the code a little bit on the culture conversation, and so I just wanted to kind of go over a little bit. So Irvin, was on his podcast. If you have a chance, go check out it's Michael Irvin on YouTube. It shouldn't be difficult to find. But he gave like a 30-minute speech about what he saw on Legends Day, and it was very cool. And I won't kind of get into all the details of all the other stuff that he talked about, but it's definitely worth going to take a listen to. But one thing that he kept on talking about was he kept on witnessing Schottenheimer injecting competition under pressure for these guys, right? He everything he saw them do was about, competition, about being competitive. And he, I think folks that have watched the interviews with the Cowboys post-practice from this last open session have heard a couple of them. And I think it was Guyton who mentioned that he won the free throw competition that they had in one of the team meetings. And we kind of all thought that was cool. But Irvin kind of gave the other side of the story there, and about how everybody was in the meeting room watching these guys shoot free throws. And even the legends that were there, Irvin and like all the rest of the guys that were there, were all on the ground, like screaming, yelling, and like trying to get these guys to win the competition. And he was just looking around and looking at it. He's like, and he was taking note. And he's like, okay, I see what coach is doing. I see what coach is doing. And then he talked about, they broke off after that, and they did the defensive meetings. And there was two different instances, and one that I think Marcus saw Michael talk about a little bit with him. And actually, why don't you tell that?
Yeah. So he sat in the wide receiver room, and Junior Adams was talking, and he said that the receivers were all engaged. They were all leaning forward. And one of the things he'll do periodically is call out a play, and he'll call out two players, and the players have to race to the whiteboard and draw out the entire play, not just the route that the receiver is supposed to run, but the assignments for everybody, all three receivers on the field, what the offensive line's doing, what the running backs are doing. And then at the end of the week, they get a tally who's won that many races. And I think Michael Irvin was saying how cool that is, that these guys have to know the offense inside and out. But he was also saying that it's just a competition, trying to find little ways in meetings even to create competition.
And so there was that, which was really cool. And then apparently there was another version as well in team where they were basically calling out random people in the team meeting and having them stand up and then recite everybody's roles inside of each one of these plays in front of everybody, right? In front of the whole other team. So, and they were being harassed, that they were messing up and that sort of thing. So he also mentioned that guys, everyone was being very loud and vocal during all of this. Like it was all very much like, come on, man, let's, and like getting after each other about like making mistakes or everything. And one of the things that Michael Irvin mentioned was that at no point during the team or the breakout meetings that he witnessed did anybody have a phone out. Now, I want you to think about that for a second. Like, think about who we're talking about. We're talking about a bunch of 21 to 30-year-olds who, in some cases a little bit older, Dak. It's that.
Is Dak the oldest player on the offense by far?
I think so, right? At this point, right?
I mean, he has to be, right?
Yeah, he's got to be. If he's an old man, for sure. So, I mean, think about that. Like, none of these guys are on phones. They're in meetings for like 3+ hours in these days, and no one had their phone out. Later, when they were on the field, Irvin, by the way, credited all that to the level of interactivity in every single one of these meetings. Even in the breakout meetings, there was constant interaction. It wasn't just sitting in their seat and then, trying to yell at these guys to absorb information. It was constant interaction. Later, when they were on the field, Irvin said they came out and everybody looked really crisp right away. Everything looked, because they had done all this competition and gotten their juices flowing in the meeting, right? So they came out and everything was ready to go, and they were looking good. And at a certain point, Shotty stopped practice and he said, "Hey, you guys have done a great job. I think let's take a break. You guys have earned it. It's fantastic work you guys are doing. Real great job." So everyone takes a break, right? And I think what happens next is the key to what Irvin was saying. All right? I know I've thrown a lot of stuff in this segment, but this is the part that I think that was key. So Irvin said that after that, they came back into practice. They started practicing again. And Irvin said that everything continued to look really crisp and looked good. But Shotty shut down practice, gathered everybody back up, and said, "How dare you guys perform like this after I praised you and let you guys go get a break early? This is absolutely ridiculous. This is not holding us to the standard that we want," because it basically implying that somebody wasn't doing their job, and you know who you are, blah, 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 blah. And Irvin said that at that point there was like a whisper that like a whisper campaign that's like happened all around him, and he could hear all the players going, "Who was it? Who was it? Who was it? Who wasn't doing it? Who wasn't doing it?" And that is what the culture is that Irvin was talking about. It's the culture of an entire team trying to figure out who wasn't doing their job, who wasn't working their hardest, who wasn't giving their all, and then making sure that they go and correct that situation. That to me, like I was listening to this and I was like, because we've been talking about what's culture, what does that even mean? That is what it means, is that when somebody screws up or when somebody even hints that there may be a screw up, the team will tear themselves apart to find the person who has done this, make sure they make the correction as a team, and then go forward from there. And I think that's the kind of culture you need to win championships. And that was Michael Irvin's point during that whole thing. And I thought it was really, really important. And it really kind of crystallized something that we've been trying to get our hands around for the last few weeks, it feels like.
I just Googled how many days until week 1, 94, by the way, because that got me so freaking pumped up for football. Like, that's why I think the Cowboys' talent might not be as good as it was in 2021, 22, 23, but I think they're hoping that the culture, the locker room, the competitiveness will make up for it. It'll make a difference in these games, these big-time games in the playoffs. This is what Cowboy fans have been wanting to hear basically since the Bill Parcells era, like a culture in a locker room like this.
Yeah, it's supporting everyone, giving their all the time. Maybe not at the best, but they're going to give the best effort, and they're going to execute crisply, and they're going to let the cards play as they may.
Let's go. All right, that is it for today's show. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Check out the podcast wherever you get the podcast. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.